Mission Impossible is a 1996 spy action thriller directed by Brian De Palma and starring Tom Cruise, Jean Reno, Ving Rhames, Jon Voight, and Emmanuel Béard. That's a lady. So with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the fifth installment of the franchise, coming out pretty soon, I thought I'd catch up with the first four films to get a grip on what was going on. This is the first time I've ever seen a Mission Impossible film, so my thoughts are fairly fresh with regards to the film itself. The story begins with Jon Voight leading a Mission Impossible crew on a mission, and this crew of course contains Tom Cruise, who is our leading character, and Emilio Estevez in a nice surprise for me. The mission is to catch the guy trying to steal the knock list, a list which essentially pairs all of the agents of IMF with all of their real names, essentially compromising all their identities. Unfortunately, the mission goes sour and Tom Cruise gets branded as a traitor and he ends up on the run, and also at the same time trying to clear his name. The strengths of Mission Impossible are clear from the very beginning. In this first sequence, I loved watching this crew interact and do this mission with their various gadgets and just getting things done. And Brian De Palma has this way of doing things very stylishly, and he absolutely applies that here. You must know the feeling of how interesting it is. You must know how interesting it is to watch James Bond just use his gadgets and be a spy. Well, that gets amplified once you've got four people doing it together, interacting and using their gadgets in tangent with one another. It was very interesting to see, and it roped me right in from the start. This sequence ultimately sets up the story, and the scene where Tom Cruise essentially gets blamed for what's happened in the mission is very well themed as well as a conversation scene. Brian De Palma uses many Dutch angles and wide-angle close-ups to create this tense atmosphere, this claustrophobic atmosphere, just as these two characters talk to each other, and it really works. Visually, the film is stunning, and many of the sequences are incredibly well directed. Where Mission Impossible falls apart is in its story. Yeah, the setup for the story is good and suitable, but when it gets beyond that, it just gets really convoluted and really kind of hard to keep up with. You know that scene in The Lost World where Julianne Moore is on that glass panel looking down, it's cracking slowly, you know, crack, 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 and she's gonna fall through and it's gonna go terribly wrong. The story of Mission Impossible, the writing of it, the screenplay in general, is kind of like that. It's just cracking and cracking and cracking as the film goes along, and as it does that, you're getting less and less invested. But fortunately, the credits roll before it shatters. So what you end up with is a structurally weak story that's pretty hard to keep up with. Like, if you're on your phone, you are screwed. Even being completely invested, I had to keep, thinking really hard and rewinding at some points just to make sure I kept up. Normally I get fairly skeptical that this is just me being dumb, but I've looked elsewhere and many people are saying the same thing. So I'm fairly confident in saying, yeah, the story's pretty convoluted and hard to keep up with. But it does have this cool spy action thriller feel to it, which I very much enjoy watching, and it provides decent context to many of the sequences of the film. For example, I've already said the first sequence is very well filmed and it's very enjoyable to watch. The second sequence of the film is absolutely incredible. Tom Cruise is having to steal something from this room where there's lasers, it detects any heat changes, it detects sound, it detects touch. It's like, this room, you have to do absolutely nothing or they will know you're there. Brian De Palma opts to use complete silence to emphasize this, and he just keeps cutting between things that are going to go wrong, and it's like, oh no, it's coming, and then it just, he releases it, and it's like, oh, and then it happens again, you're like, oh. It's a scene that I will never forget. It's filled with such incredible amounts of tension, and you can just show it to anyone. It's like, and then just when they move on from it, it's like, oh, that was really fun. I love the fact that he used silence, and I love how long he lingered on it. This is a fairly long scene, about 10 minutes, I think. And it pretty much makes any convoluted story completely worthwhile. And the final action sequence is fairly well directed. It holds up pretty well today, special effects wise, for the most part. I quite enjoyed it, but it pales in comparison to this scene. Trust me, if you haven't seen it, you kind of have to see it just for that scene. There are also some cool twists thrown in, but they kind of get lost among the convoluted story, and they kind of lessen the impact of them, so they aren't as great as they really should have been, though Brian De Palma again uses some very clever filmmaking techniques to really try his best to emphasize these twists in the moments where they're being revealed. Even though I complimented his use of Dutch angles to create the tension and desired effect he wanted, sometimes he uses them a little bit too much and it feels a little bit Battlefield earthy. Like, he doesn't need to be at the side all the time, we can just sit and watch a conversation sometimes. It gets a little bit tiring, but that's just a nitpick. And overall, Mission Impossible is a fairly enjoyable time with a silly story, but it keeps you invested all the way through to an extent, and the action sequences more than make up for it. I highly suggest checking it out, and it's aged pretty well in the 20 years it's been out, so I give Mission Impossible a 7 out of 10. Yeah, the film's riddled with flaws, but it's an enjoyable time regardless, and even if you don't dig the film as a whole, there are some scenes that you can't deny were incredible to watch. But what did you think of Mission Impossible? Did you think the story was just too much to get through and you didn't really enjoy the sequences at all? Or do you think it's actually incredible and it completely makes up for any silly story? And do you think I'm dumb for not understanding the story completely? Whatever you think, agree or disagree, comment below and just let me know what you think. If you like this video, please like and favourite in the boxes below. You know what to click. And if you really like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe. Helps me so much more than you could ever know. And thank you again for watching.